Welcome everyone to the Love and Marriage session with Pastor Leon. Last night he delivered an amazing message and even answered live Q&A from the audience. And let me tell you, nothing was off limits.
That's true, and we know you're going to enjoy tonight's event. If you have any questions as well, just type them in the comment section, and Leon is looking forward to answering your questions next week in a video just for you.
Without further ado, Pastor Leon.
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. It's fun to watch as these couples have these competitions, and it reminds us to be detailed and make sure that we're working on our marriage. I was supposed to be there standing on stage today, and a couple things came up. A close friend of mine died, and we're just working on some funeral stuff. And so I couldn't make it back there. So I thought, let's just go live and let's talk and laugh and have some fun. And I've been actually literally just kind of praying and thinking and looking at some of this stuff. And here's what I want to do tonight. Now, a number of years ago, I made a bunch of notes on the differences between men and women. Now, I'm not talking about equality. There's a bunch of crazy stuff going on there right now. They're trying to make it look like men and women, there is no difference. You get to pick your gender and all the rest of that stuff that the Bible disagrees with. And we'll talk about that another time. So the equality of men and women, well, that's a moral issue, a political issue. But there are essential differences between men and women that is a very scientific one. It's very proven. Now, if somebody I had a couple of books that were some of my sources and other things, and I forgot to write them down. So if someone finds them and says, hey, you didn't make that up, I know. Sorry if I don't have a bibliography. But if I want to dive in, and I'm probably going to read a lot of it because it's just funny, but it's something I could never memorize the whole thing anyway. And so I want to dive in. The Bible's very clear that men and women are equal. Bible's very clear that we are uniquely different. And so, for example, when a man goes to a restroom, he usually goes for one reason and one reason only. Now, women, they use restrooms as social lounges, therapy rooms. Women who go to the restroom as strangers can often come out as best friends and lifelong buddies. But if you ever heard a man say, hey, Frank, you want to go to the bathroom? Everybody would look. Men, they dominate TV remote controls and they flick through channels. Women don't mind watching commercials. Under pressure, men drink alcohol and invade other countries. Women eat chocolate and go shopping. Women criticize men for being insensitive, uncaring, not listening, not being warm and compassionate, not talking, not giving enough love, not being committed enough, wanting to have sex rather than make love, and leaving the toilet seat up. That's probably going to be the list I'll get in questions soon. Men criticize women about their driving, for not being able to read street directions, for turning maps upside down for their lack of a sense of direction, for talking too much without getting to the point, for not initiating sex enough, and for leaving the toilet seat down. Men can never find a pair of socks, but their CDs and DVDs are in alphabetical order. Women can always find the missing set of car keys, but rarely the most direct route to the destination. Men think they're the more sensible sex. Women know they are. Men marvel at the way a woman can walk into a room full of people and give an instant commentary on everyone. Women can't believe that men are so unobservant. Men are they're amazed, at how a woman can see a red flashing oil, or can't see a red flashing oil light on the car dashboard, but can spot a dirty sock in a dark corner 20 feet away in their room. Women are bewildered by men who can consistently parallel park a car in a tight spot using a rear view mirror, but can't ever find the G spot. If a woman is out driving and gets lost, she'll stop and ask for directions. To a man, this is a sign of weakness. He'll drive around in circles for hours, muttering things like, I found a new way to get there, or I'm in the general area, and hey, I recognize that gas station. Now, I want to dive in and talk about differences that doctors are saying and agree on. And of course, science is always developing, and there'll be little changes here and there. And this is not everybody. You can't just make every man and every woman exactly what I'm talking about. But the general differences now, as we look at the physiology, are proven by doctors and scientists. So here we go. Well, we know the brain is divided into two halves, left and right. The left deals with more mathematics, verbal, logical, facts, deduction, analysis, order, words of a song, linear, sees fine details. Now, the right side is creative, artistic, visual, has intuition, ideas, imagination. It's holistic. It understands and knows the tune of a song, sees the big picture. It is spatial, multi-processing. It's like having kind of two separate computers on your shoulders, and women have 8 times the connections of men between the two halves. That's an 800% more connections between the two. Research shows that female hormones, they cause nerve cells to grow more connections between the two parts of the brain. And the more connections you have, the more fluent your speech, the more ability to multi-track activities, a greater range of sensory equipment, and an ability to make faster, more accurate judgments about people, about situations on an intuitive level. Men's brains are specialized. It's configured to concentrate on one specific task at a time. A man will stop his car to read a map and still has to turn the radio down. He has less connections between the right and the left hemispheres of the brain. When you take a brain scan of a man's head when he is reading, you will find that he is virtually deaf. A woman's brain is configured for multitasking. She can talk on a phone while cooking a new recipe and still watch TV. She'll drive a car, put on makeup, listen to the radio while talking on a hands-free phone. But if a man is cooking and you talk to him, he's likely to become angry because he can't follow the written directions and listen at the same time. If a man is shaving and you talk to him, he'll cut himself. And a man will accuse a woman of making him miss a turnoff because she was talking to him. Because women use both sides of their brains, 50% of them find it more difficult to tell their left hand from their right without looking at a ring or a scar. This makes it hard for women to know what to do when told turn left or turn right. Most women can brush their teeth up and down while polishing a table using a circular motion with the other hand. Men find this difficult, if not impossible. When men brush their teeth, their monotracked brain forces them to focus entirely on that single task. They'll stand square to the basin, feet a foot apart, body bent over the sink, moving their heads back and forth against the brush, usually to the speed of the water. All right, let's talk about how men and women and their vision, how they see. When a couple goes to a party, she can see everyone in the room in seconds. He has to look at each event individually, making him look obvious. So it's amazing how a woman's eyesight misses nothing, but can't see the garage wall when backing up. Most women don't have strong spatial vision. Most men do. A professor from the University of Pennsylvania proved that when resting, 70% of a man's brain shuts off. I'm sorry. I've done so much marriage counseling that these things are funny. And when a woman is resting, only 10% of her brain is shut off. A woman knows her friends, their children's friends, their hopes, their dreams, their romances, their fears, what mischief that they're plotting. Men, they're vaguely aware of short people running around the house. All right, let's talk about this. The eye is an extension of the brain, and that sits kind of on the edge or outside the skull. and it contains 130 million photoreceptors to deal with black and white, and 7 million to handle color. Women have a greater variety of cones than men and can describe color in great detail. Women have wider peripheral vision and better brain software to see. Many women's peripheral vision is effective up to 180 degrees, which means they can look straight ahead and you would be right here. And they literally know what facial expressions, read lips, etc. A man's brain configures for his eyes in a type of long-distance tunnel vision. So he can see farther, clearer, and more accurately. A man's got problems finding his socks, shoes, and the butter in the fridge, his car keys, his wallet, and are all around him. He just can't see them. Men have to move their head up and down and side to side to see the same things that a woman can see at a glance. Now, car insurance statistics, which are very important to make companies prosper, they show and prove that female drivers are less likely to have a collision from the side at an intersection. They're more likely to hit the front or the back of some car while parking because they have a less developed spatial skill. A man will always get caught looking at someone else every time. And with their wider peripheral vision, women, they can look at guys all the time and never get caught because they don't need to look right at them. Men are better equipped to drive at night and can better separate and identify the movement of other vehicles on the road. Most women can testify to a kind of night blindness when looking at approaching traffic. Women can see more details in the dark, but over a short, wider field. Men have a hard time lying to women because a woman's superior sensory picks up and analyzes an amazing amount of data with voice tone, eye posture, body movement, eye movement, changes in facial color, nervous gestures, tics. If you have to lie to a woman, do it on the phone. And then you cut off about 93% of her ability to detect. Now, let's talk about, in the physiology and the difference of men and women, let's talk about the ability to talk, listen, and comprehend. Now, someone is saying, what's this got to do with my marriage? We have some fun with this. We'll be answering a lot of question and answers for stuff, but you've got to understand how different you are. So much of the disagreements between men and women will come down to these hilarious differences when you realize how different you are, how you judge things differently, see things differently. All right, we've known for thousands of years that men aren't great conversationalists, partially when compared to women. Girls start speaking earlier than boys, and a 3-year-old girl has twice the vocabulary of a 3-year-old boy, and her speech is pretty much 100% comprehensible. Now, speech pathologists tell us they mainly deal with young boys. Now, if you ask a 5-year-old boy, how are you, his sister or mother will usually answer for him and say, he's fine, thanks. A man's speech and language operate mainly in the left brain. A woman's speech and languages are located in both sides of the brain. Male brains are highly compartmentalized and can separate and store information at the end of the day. The female brain does not store info like this. This way, their problems keep going around and around in their head. The only way a woman gets problems out of her mind is by talking about them to acknowledge them. When a woman talks at the end of the day, her objective is to discharge the problems, not to find solutions. During a woman's cycle on high estrogen days, she behaves calmly and speaks with near perfect articulation. On high testosterone days, her speech is more erratic, but her spatial ability is better. I'm having fun even if you're not. But anyway, when women sit together watching a movie on TV, They usually talk simultaneously about various subjects. If men are in the same room, they'll be telling him to shut up. During commercials, a man will often ask his wife to explain the storyline to him. A man's brain. All right, let's talk about brains. A man's brain thinks things over silently with an expressionless face. Only when he has the answer does he speak or communicate the solution. When a man is staring out a window, he is having a conversation in his head. When a woman sees him, she thinks he's bored or idle and will try to talk to him. This makes him angry because he can't do two things at once. A man can sit with other men for hours fishing and rarely talk and never feel uneasy. A woman will verbalize a series of items out loud in random order, listing all the options and possibilities. Her brain is pre-wired to use speech as a main form of expression, and it's one of her strengths. A woman can effortlessly speak an average of 6,000 to 8,000 words a day, and she uses an additional 2,000 to 3,000 vocal sounds to communicate, as well as 8,000 to 10,000 gestures and facial expressions and head movements. This gives her a daily average of 20,000 pieces of communication to relay her thoughts and her messages. A man utters 2,000 to 4,000 words, 1,000 to 2,000 vocal sounds, and 2,000 to 3,000 body language signals. So his daily average adds up to 7,000 communications. Once a man has used his 7,000 up, he has no desire to communicate anymore. If a woman has small children at home, she'll only have used up 2,000 to 3,000 of these communications, and she's got 15,000 left. And so he's home with none to talk. Friction at the dinner table, well, that's a common problem for a lot of people. But here's the other issue. A lot of couples fail when men are silent because women begin to feel unloved. So let's talk about how men talk. A man's sentences are shorter than a woman's, and they're more structured. They usually have a simple opening, a clear point, and a conclusion. If you multi-track several subjects with a man, he gets lost. It's important for women to understand that if she wants to be convincing or persuasive with a man, she should only present one clear thought or idea at a time. The first rule of talking to a man is keep it simple. Give him only one thing at a time to think about. Men usually interrupt each other only if they are becoming competitive or aggressive. So if you want to communicate with a man, do not interrupt him when he's speaking. A woman can do this, and it just shows participation amongst women but in the conversation, but a man sees it as a rude interruption. Women, how do women talk? Well, they talk with a greater flow of information between the left and the right hemispheres. Most women can talk about several subjects simultaneously and sometimes in the same sentence. It's like juggling 3 or 4 balls at one time. And most women can do this effortlessly. This multi-tracking is frustrating for a man who will become completely dazed and confused. Brain scans show that women can speak and listen simultaneously, and they often accuse men of being able to do neither. Men are direct, women are indirect. Indirect talk, it builds rapport, but does not work with men. They do not understand the rules of indirect talk. So when a woman wants a coffee, she'll ask, "Do you feel like a coffee?" Meaning she wants one. A man will say, "Get me a cup of coffee," sometimes appearing rude and abrupt. So to build a relationship, a man needs to understand that indirect talk is a part of women's wiring. So don't get upset. To get a man to listen, give him advance notice and provide an agenda. When a woman asks the question, "Can you change the light bulb?" he hears, Do you have the ability to change a light bulb? Not could you go do it? So, but these, like I said, but these words, career, they've got no commitment to act, to motivate a man. So to act, just say, would you please change the light bulb? Women talk emotively. Men talk literally. A man needs to understand that a woman will use words that he shouldn't take literally. She doesn't mean it that way. She will take poetic license and use words that she doesn't mean, but it's to get her point across. All right, let's talk about hearing between a man and a woman and that function of the brain. Women hear better than men and are excellent at distinguishing high-pitched sounds. For example, a woman will hear the kitten crying in the distance first. However, a man, when he hears it with his superior spatial and directional skills, can tell where the kitten is. At 1 week old, a baby girl can distinguish a mother's voice from the others in the room, and boys can't. The female brain has the ability to separate and categorize sound and make decisions about each sound. A woman can have a face-to-face conversation with someone and still monitor another conversation nearby. A man's got difficulty paying attention to one conversation, and if there's TV noise or dishes banging or background noise, etc., he's got to tell everybody to shut up because he can't concentrate. He can't even get that one conversation there. Women can hear between the lines. They are sensitive to tone change, volume, and pitch. They can hear emotional changes as people talk. When a woman says, "Don't use that tone with me," and men don't have a clue what she's talking about. Men miss the details. A strange woman can be hitting on a husband all night, and he won't notice it till his wife tells him. Men are often called insensitive by women because women always pick up more than 8 times the data that men do. That's 800% more. We're going to go to questions in just a few minutes, but I wanted to go through just some of that. There is a ton more of data. I want to talk to you married couples. One of the series I'm going to encourage you to get, I think they've got it there, is the destructive force in your relationships. And that one is available there. And what I talk about is how to judge one another in a marriage and how you can't. And even though women have all this advanced onboard circuitry, the Bible says you still can't judge the heart, the motive, the intentions of a man. When married couples begin to judge each other, first of all, Jesus forbids it. He says, do not judge one another. You know you're judging when you look at something your spouse does and you ask yourself this question, why do they do that? And then you answer it. Now, what that means is you are judging their motive, their intentions. Did you know the Bible says that even you, a lot of times, don't know your own heart? You don't even know why you do some of the things you do. And so we really need the help of God's Word and the Holy Spirit so that we don't judge one another. And you need to get the series. I haven't got time to teach on that. But the other series that I included here, and we got some of the ones, and I believe they've got them there as well in Calgary, is I Want a New Marriage. This series is a big deal because after 40 years of pastoring and marrying people a second time, a third time, and people want a new marriage, and we'll deal with some of the stuff with divorce and death and remarriage. But even if you're married, you have a greater ability, unless there's about 4 areas of problems that one won't deal with, but you have a greater ability to have a new marriage. And that walks you through how to have a new marriage, because this ability to love each other, and a really crucial thought that you'll find in there is that you need grace in a marriage and you need truth. Grace is that ability to love regardless, to be a blessing to that person regardless. It's mercy, it's grace. But all marriages need truth as to where's the direction you want this relationship to go, or are you going to just continually forgive that person for something that hurts you year after year, decade after decade? And so the Bible teaches us that grace and truth have to be combined. Grace alone in your marriage will allow your spouse to develop things that hurt you and destroy your marriage. Truth is the direction that you want your marriage to go. Truth sets boundaries in your marriage, because if you don't, and if you just have truth, you've got a legalistic, mean person. Men and women, they can be legalistic. There's no grace or mercy. It's all truth. This is the truth. But grace and truth must come together in this beautiful dance that creates marriages that are worth sticking to. And so there's a great book out there that is probably one of my favorites, and it's by Henry Cloud, and it talks about boundaries in marriage. If you ever look for an author, I met him and spent the day with him a few years ago, and we did some television together, and you know, there's some people you admire in life, both when you've read their books and when you meet them, and he's one of them. Anything he writes, I think I've read. It's a lot of his books. Just a brilliant man from God's Word, psychology, human character and behavior. He is just got astounding books. The one on marriage with boundaries will answer 10 of the most asked questions married couples have. And it will help you so that you can find the issues you need to deal with. And I just think the book is a brilliant book. It's about boundaries in marriage. And order it in off Amazon, however you do that, because that is such a crucial thing. When God made a man and a woman and he put them together, a lot of people think he did it for a joke, because how in the world can these people live together? And the issue is that the strengths and the differences in a man are designed to come together with the strengths and the differences in a woman. And together, you are a formidable force in this planet. Recognize that you don't get married for love first. You get married for the purposes of God. Your marriage, what can it do for Jesus? What can it do for his local church? And so we get married for purpose first. Seek first the kingdom of God, and then of course for love. But if you get married for love with no purpose, it's going to self-destruct. Well, I want to jump into a whole ton of teaching, but we're going to go to questions. And my last thought on teaching is this, that enthusiasm is one of the most amazing keys to life. Most people think variety is the spice of life. You're wrong. Enthusiasm is the spice of life. And we need to have that in our homes, our marriages, our day-to-day living, how we talk, how we are together. This enthusiasm is absolutely addictive. It is the spice of life. I could play volleyball again tomorrow and love it, even though I've played it for 40 years, if I've got enthusiastic people with me when we play. So that's a crucial one. All right, we're going to dive into some questions, because questions are great. It gives somebody an anonymity and a chance to ask a question where they don't feel judged. And so I love these honest questions. And there's some X-rated ones, and I'm going to dive into them. So I'm expecting that everyone stuck to the rules and didn't bring your kids or unmarried people. And we'll have to edit them out before we put it on social media, I'm sure. All right, let's start here. First one says, what can I do when my spouse doesn't want to be intimate with me on a regular basis? Great question. I hear it all the time from a lot of men, and more I'm hearing this from women. As we were talking earlier, it's crucial that you talk in your marriage and you pick the right time. And we need to understand that when we get married, we didn't get married to be best friends. You don't have to get married to be best friends. We got married to be lovers and best friends. And so this issue of loving the other person, and that goes a whole lot of directions, but sexual intimacy is absolutely important. And to think that it's not important and to not make love, you can put up such a resistance that your spouse just finally gives up. That's a huge mistake, because God put sexual desires in a man and in a woman, and they must be learned and grown and developed and practiced with each other. And to not pay attention to it or to shut it off and just think, well, that's his problem, that's her problem, that's wrong. The Bible even teaches us that when it comes to fasting for a few days of food, it says, because when you fast everything. It says make sure that you don't fast too long so that one isn't tempted. And so I just want to say that I see mostly amongst Christian marriages that women, a lot of times, and so do men. And if I go back and forth and pick on one or the other, don't get upset, because I actually find that the problems are on both sides, and sometimes over the years they're just a lot on the one side. But I find that they feel like they're a Christian, they have to stay with me, and they have to be faithful. What a selfish, self-centered way to look at this. They didn't marry you because they wanted to practice, 30 years of self-exile sexually and see if they could be faithful. No, they married you for love, for intimacy. And so you need to talk with each other. You need to listen to this together. If you're here, great, it's going to help you. You need to read books together. Going to church is a big deal like ours, because you can't go to church very long at our church where some of these topics aren't going to be talked about. And I was looking at some of the series that we've got here that we've done in our church. I believe in love, how to have, we talk about marriage, but imperfect families. This one is for the singles, and it just says ideal mate material. I did this one in 2 sessions to the 20-year-olds in our church, and they were all complaining about never finding anybody, and there's no good men left, and I can't find any women in this church. We've got to go to the bar or whatever. And so one of the things, and so if you got a friend or a son or a daughter, grands, get it for them, because we begin to come up with this idea. Listen, why would God bring someone to you that he wants you to have that's going to blow your mind, your life's going to be amazing, if you're not ideal mate material? And he doesn't want to curse someone with you. It's pretty blunt, and they loved it, but it's a great season session for them. This person says, in a godly marriage, what kind of sex is off limits, if any, ? The Bible is very clear. It says the bed is undefiled. So that means between a man and a woman in a covenant of marriage, that is an adventure. That is something to enjoy, to explore. And so many religious people, they haven't even been talked to about it, so they're for sure thinking it's the missionary position. You got, 5 minutes and that's it, and just hurry it up. This is not important. And we've got to recognize that God created sexuality and intimacy. And the Bible's got a whole book on sex technique. You go to it and it's X-rated. And you can say, well, Leon, it's not about sex. It is, it's a comparison. Of course. But it's also showing you and I that God made every nerve ending on your body. And so what I tell married couples is that, of course, you don't include anybody in your relationship with sex, but that pretty much, if it is honoring each other, that there isn't any rules that I can find in the Bible between a man and a woman and how they please the other person. Now, we could look at a lot of things, and I don't have time today, like, if you need a lot of equipment and a lot of props, Bible doesn't say you can't, but if you do, it just creates some issues. Of course, pornography isn't good, because one of the keys to making your relationship good sexually is to renew your mind. Now, when you renew your mind, you renew your emotions, which are impacted by sex. You renew your feelings, which are those deep feelings you have about sex. It renews your imagination, because if you've had former sexual interests or relationships, that to renew your mind, Holy Spirit will help you to renew all of the pictures and the feelings and the things that have happened, both good and bad, that need to just be cleaned and renewed because you're married or you have a relationship with your spouse. So in a godly marriage, that's a quick look at, I heard one guy say, from the nose to the toes, anything goes. And that's between a man and a wife. And in today's world, you probably got to be careful there, but that's a good look at this gift that God has given a married couple when it comes to sexual relationships. All right. How does a husband support a wife when she's going through a difficult time with her mental, physical health? It's a great question. I think the thing about marriage that's important is that if you got married for just you needed sex, because the Bible says get married or burn, you have a lot of stuff to learn and grow in. Marriage is about valuing the other person, loving the other person. And every year of your marriage, you're going to find that it just grows. The Bible teaches layers and levels of intimacy the world has no understanding of. And it influences sexuality. It influences making love, intimacy, how you see the other person, what you will do to go through a season that's hard. I was reading a stat the other day that said that when a marriage goes through a really rough time, for one person's in a season the other person can't stand, hang in there and learn to work the boundaries that I talked about, and which means to walk in love doesn't mean to be walked all over, because you have to speak truth in love. You've got to set boundaries, but stay in there. They say that I think it's almost half of the marriages going through a season with one of them that would destroy most marriages. Half of them would have lasted if they'd just waited this out and learned how to stand strong, walk in love, and to love that person through this season. God created this thing called time, and it's actually beautiful because, the Bible says that everything is beautiful in its time. That even as we grow in our marriage, we need time to become who we are and to be the biggest blessing we can be to our spouse. And so we've got to give each other that time. That's where patience is involved. The fruit of the Spirit are the most incredible things to develop. Read them every day and develop them, because it talks in there about patience and long suffering. You don't need those to deal with God. You need those to deal with the people around you. This one says, how do I help my husband last longer? ... And so I'm just assuming this person means making love. And it's one of the ongoing problems we find in counseling with couples is this area. And there's some great Christian material about this. And it's very frustrating. It can almost destroy young guys. And I think it's important to get some good stuff on it, because technique is important. It's not everything, but it's an important part of it, that you and your wife get to develop, to learn and to grow how to please the other person physically, how to please the other person emotionally, how to please the other person. And so when in this way, it's important to guys. And so you'll find out that when it comes to making love, there's lots of things you can do. One of them is then just do more foreplay with your wife, because if you're going to go straight to making love, it's not going to be the way you want it. And there's lots of other stuff. I don't want to get too G-rated, but that can help you out. And so I encourage you guys, not alone, but together. There's some great Christian books on literally sexual technique between a man and a woman, and some of the things to overcome. Beautiful, wonderful books. One of the books is by a Dr. Wheat, W-H-E-A-T. Order it in, go through it together. It will change your love life from a place of, two rookies, just learning, which is fun. But as the years go by, hopefully you're learning and developing in technique. And I think that's one of the best books that I've read, and I've read quite a few of them. How do you deal with one partner wanting way more sex than the other? Again, when we talk about sexual things, you need to have a conversation about this. And there's some ways to deal with it, like typically, but not always anymore, because there are now women who are saying that man doesn't hardly touch me. But in a lot of cases, I tell women, I say, when your husband wants to make love more and more, stop shutting him down because you're going to get angry and irritated. Look him right in the face and say, and learn to develop a language like, okay, bud, I'm just so tired right now. I'm so out of the mood. I mean, if you insist, I guess I can please you, but if you'll just give me a day to catch up here, hubby, I am going to ring your bells. You just wait till, and just give him some hope. Give him a promise. Talk this way so that it's not just no, 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 no. In a relationship, the person who always says no about anything is always the person in control. Let's go out. No. Let's make love. No. You want to do go? No, no. So the person who's more adventurous and wants to do things has all these dreams and ideas, and if the other person doesn't want to do any of them, it puts the negative person or the no person always in charge. And that's what makes marriage very hard for somebody who didn't get married to do nothing that they're thinking about or dreaming about or desiring. And so talk about these things. It's crucial that you have real talks and recognize, sometimes, and I'm a little annoyed at times with Christian marriages because of the expectations that we put on our spouse that you have to be anyway because you're a Christian, and so you have to be patient with me and you got to be kind to me, and even if I don't, you have, and you kind of go, oh boy, like that's an awful. Even in the world, I've heard Christian women and Christian men, and I mean unsaved people say something like, I remember one time we was laughing because I was a paramedic working with nurses, and this one nurse didn't even know the Lord at all. She said, well, tonight I got to get home, man. I got to look after my man. And all the girls kind of giggled. She had a sense of, I want to look after him. And I've heard guys say, man, I need to go home. Sorry, guys, I got to look after that woman. She's a blessing. And we got to keep that in our marriages as well, this desire to look after them. And don't use anything I say to beat up your spouse when you get home. Leon said, because that's going to get you nowhere. This one says, and we had a lot of this question from women. When your hubby knows your love language, yet it's difficult for him to put it into action, what do? Well, first of all, most of the people who read the book Love Languages are women. Men don't read that much when it comes to self-help books. Now, that's not true because there's some of us that are avid readers, but percentage-wise. And so you need to go through the love languages together and see the value in what it means, because many women simply can use the love language teaching that, well, my love language is, and you didn't, and you're destroying what the book is actually saying. This gorgeous dance between the love languages, that this is your predominant love language. And by the way, everybody has all of them. I like them all, but there is one predominant one. And so as you learn what each is, it can help. So I would say go through the book together. Just decide, let's look at it, or as we read through it, let's talk about it and create some time, because the love languages is used now for fighting, but it was written to solve so many problems and show somebody that, guys, if you use a love language that your wife doesn't care about and you ignore her predominant love language, then she is feeling unloved even though you are pouring love on her. But the same is true the opposite way. Do you know what your husband's love language is? And are you loving him with that love language? And then you can talk and laugh, but get the book out and go through it together. Or get the audio, and when you're in the car ride together going places, pop it on and listen to a couple chapters and talk about it. There's something about great learning together that makes marriages great and strong. How do you bring up topics that you know are sensitive and they've caused fights in the past, but they're still important? That can go in a lot of directions, but a lot of times one of the people in a relationship is able to stay out of important conversations by just getting angry, and their irritableness and their anger keeps the conversations at bay. Now, if that's you, you need to stop, because regardless of what's going on, there will be a time you'll pay for that. Now, to the person who wants to talk about things, you still need to talk about it. You can set it up, say, hey, we need to chat about this, and let's do it at this point. If you're continually bringing it up, it's going to destroy your relationship. And so you need to set a right time. Or I've told people, write a letter. Sit down and handwrite a letter. And when you do it, it's kind of funny when you watch that couple dealing with stuff. You need to stay away from judging the other person. You're like this, so I'm like, no, you just go, and you need to talk about, this is how I feel when this situation isn't being resolved. This is how I feel when you don't do these things, or we don't. And he needs to know your feelings. And but you don't write a letter to attack the person. And that way you get a chance to put your feelings out on paper. And then send it to them. Or if you want to use an email, you could. But writing it on paper, and that way that person has to sit down, and there's no argument, because arguments never change. It's the same ruts that you slide into every time you have this argument. So this ability to sit down and craft a letter, and don't just write it and send it. Write it and reread it the next day, and reread it the third day. And you'll begin to see things, and well, that's not really what I meant, and I'm not that angry. And then now you're communicating in a way, especially where you can't get past something. And I will say that if your marriage, at a certain point, you need counseling. And if the other person says, there's no way, if you go to a counselor, I'm leaving you. If it's already there, then you'd be a fool not to go to the counselor, because that person is that bold to be that blunt with you. They're going to leave you anyway, or they control and manipulate you that much. This person says, we've had years of marriage where we didn't effectively communicate. We both have said hurtful things over the years. How do we rebuild? Where do we even start? When you come to getting born again as a couple, or many couples that come to Springs Church and begin to value the relationship, they begin to understand personal responsibility with God, and they want to work on this, they can think they have to go back and clean up every situation in the past. I don't think that's very good. I think that going to every hurtful situation in the past will dig it up. It's like stirring it up and ripping the scab off of wounds. So you need to, one of the exercises I'm going to teach you right now, and you think this is really immature or this is simple, it's not. This is what I do with most of the couples when I did marriage counseling, and I don't do marriage counseling anymore, I don't have time, but there's lots of great counselors. As I would talk with men and women, we would talk about what it is that hurt them, and then at some point in speaking with them, before I would let them go, I'd have them turn and face each other, touching knees, taking each other's hands, and I would say, look into each other's eyes and ignore me, but I'm going to guide you through what I want you to say. And then I would have the one, usually the one that had, in that season of marriage, had done most of the pain or the heartache. I'd have them look at them and say, I am sorry. And then they have to use their own words. I am sorry that I have, for example, ignored you, pursued my own life, never been here for you. I'm just so sorry. Will you forgive me? And then the other person looks them right in the eye. They're not allowed to look around. You look each other in the eye. And you tell that person, I forgive you. Then you go and you flip that around. Then the other person looks at them and says, will you forgive me? And whatever things come up that maybe were talked about, and it says, for being so angry and negative and always bringing up problems, not being concerned about how tired you are. Like, however that person wants to talk. And if they want to talk long, let them talk long. And then they say, will you forgive me? Or I'm sorry, will you forgive me? and they have the person looking in the eye the whole time. And don't let them look around when one person is talking. Learn to look into each other's eyes. The other person, you say, I forgive you. Those words are so powerful if two people will do this right, that marriages should do this. Because if you do not ask for forgiveness and the other person forgives you, you just keep brushing stuff under the carpet, you aren't bringing in one of the most incredibly powerful tools for marriage, which is to acknowledge what you've done wrong, look them right in the eye with no one around, so that it's a very intimate, and just say, I have hurt you and wronged you. I did this. Please forgive me. I should have been more tentative. And it could be as simple as you were gone for hours late and they thought you were dead and laying in a car and you didn't call home. Yeah, we'll get over it. But say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't call you. I'm sorry that I put you through so much pain. And the more you can understand the pain you brought that person and explain it, the better and the deeper you touch that person as you are able to speak out at what you did to hurt that person. And if you're not good at it, it'll just become another exercise, but it can become a beautiful tool. And to forgive someone and to ask for forgiveness, and then the other person gives it, it cleans up a marriage so powerfully because you're using biblical truths, and it affects you emotionally. Even if it doesn't change things right away, it's like now the wound has been cleaned out. The wound has been stitched up. Now give it a little bit of time, and because it is cleaned out, all the debris out of that wound, it's been stitched up, it's got some powder in there that is antiseptic or whatever, and this thing is going to heal. Now you've got something that heals. And so that's something for a lot of questions that I may not even get to, that you could practice as a man and a wife. This one says, my mother-in-law is crazy, and my husband doesn't stand up to her and her demands. It's like there's a third person in our marriage. Help. All right. I will say right now that in-laws, our counseling, when we counsel with married couples, once you get past some of the things, but there's always seems to be somebody in the other person's family that can make the new person coming into the family through marriage can make their life hell. And I've watched families almost destroy a beautiful person. And when a couple gets married, it is crucial that you understand that, okay, let's just pick on a man, because that way I can give an example. So, buddy, if you marry this woman and she comes into your life and you take her home, and someone begins to take her on, your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, and she begins to feel uncomfortable and unhappy, deal with it quickly and listen to her and talk to her. And then you go to fight for her. You make sure that you shut down that aggressive sister that's going to prove to you you married this little loser, and what are you doing? Or a mother that is just bringing down all kinds of, this is what I want, this is what you do, here's where you're going to spend this day. We always get together on Sundays. We're always together. This is our culture as a family. No, listen, you leave your father and mother. Marriage means you leave them. You leave everything that has to do with your schedule, etc., and you make this new person everything in your life, and you and your spouse create your own traditions. You create all that you want to be, you want to build, where you live, what you do on holidays, how you raise your kids. You leave both sets of parents, period, and you build your own. Now, of course, I'm a grandparent. Of course, I want them to love me and be with me, and I want to be able to give advice when I can if they like it. But I have to earn that, because they are totally free to walk away from me as a grandpa, as a father-in-law, if I just bring pain, heartache, expectations that just create such hurt. And of course, expectations are the biggest deal with mother-in-laws and father-in-laws. And so you have the guts to get up, take them on, face to face. Come on, guys, like, what we always say, get a pair. and get up. And some of the toughest guys I know would never touch their mother or their sister. Oh dear, just learn to get along. I had to get along. She doesn't have to learn to get along with them that way. And as a marriage, you decide when you get married that you rise up and you create all your own traditions, places, times, and who cares? Who cares what your parents used to do? You two together decide your life. Now, then I'm going to say this at the same time. Often in counseling, I will meet an insecure wife or husband that wants to take them away from their family, doesn't enjoy being there as much as they enjoy being with their family, and so they'll just take them over. That's wrong as well. You're bringing such pain and heartache and you're being selfish. So this issue of in-laws is a huge issue. It's one of my most asked questions if people get a chance to talk to me. And so, man and wife, you build your life. You create your traditions. You pick your careers. You pick where you want to live. You pick what you want to do on holidays. You pick. It's your life. And I know you'll recognize that grandparents on both sides can bring such strength and blessing and ability. So do everything in your power to work it out until there's just nothing left to work out. And then last line on that, if you have a person in either family that literally is destroying your marriage or you got to protect your kids from it, cut them off. Cut them off. Don't go visit them. Don't hang out with them. Tell them why. Confront them and say, I'm sorry. And no, I'm not arguing about this. We've been doing this for years already, but no. And you make sure your kids are safe. You make sure that they have the right culture. You make sure that your marriage is strong. That's why the Bible says you leave your father and mother and you cleave to your wife or you cleave to your spouse. And then you work out all these issues so that you can be together. It doesn't mean you just cut them off and you never see them again. It just means create boundaries. Reading the boundary book is phenomenal because there's another book on just boundaries. It'll show you how to handle an aggressive dad, a dominating mom that's now wrecking your marriage. And you've never learned to create boundaries before? Do it now. One of the greatest teachings, I think, for a lot of people in this area. This one says, my husband isn't a very hands-on father. How do I get him more involved? You know, a lot of men, depending on their background, have been raised in a place where, you know, I'll go work hard and you look after the kids, and they've never had it modeled. And so modeling, if they've never had it modeled for them, then they just feel awkward. So many men, I mean, great big strong hands, they touch a little baby and their eyeballs get this big. They're just afraid they're going to break it. They're afraid they're going to press too hard. And so take your time and involve your husband with you as you play with the kids. Because if he just comes home and you need a break, and here's the kids, and he's never done that or it's not his way he was raised, you're going to create some real difficulties. And so wisdom would just say, you know, if you came from a home where your dad was so hands-on, babies, toddlers, etc., and this man didn't, he just needs to be taught, to be shown how enjoyable it is. This is how to hold a little baby. You know, I have to laugh because at a certain age of my grandkids, I can't seem to hold them very well. They just cry. And so, and you know, my daughters, they feel bad about it, but I know that, you know, you hand them to their mom, their grandmother, their aunties, and they've got these soft chests, and babies just curl around. And when I try to hold them, so at a certain age is when I keep trying and learning, but at a certain age, they notice me and they want to be there. But we're just not sometimes as good. Show us, teach us how. Like, how do you play with a 2-year-old girl? Together do that for a while, and he'll see, you know, whether you're playing dolls or whether it's going to be, you know, teasing and running around the house and playing hide and seek with them. But I think if you just say, I'd like you to, I think it's very important that we learn this. And but a lot of men are awkward at certain ages. While I say this, I'll say something else. Men, when your daughters begin to develop, and, you know, they're going through that stage where they were a little girl that you'd wrestle and tickle and play with and just hold and sit on your knee watching a movie and cuddle on the couch. And all of a sudden, they start to become a woman. most men, because of the sick world that we live in, it's just they stop all of that, and you can just see them being a little awkward. Don't do that. You are the safest man for her to hug, to sit on your lap, to cuddle on the couch, to kiss her. So, and if you don't, it creates this thing in girls that they need that. They need a safe man to hold them, hug them, love them, tell them they're beautiful. They should be able to walk out and look at you and say, Dad, do you like what I'm wearing? And help them out if you're any good at it. Say, you might want to do this. Or you look beautiful. I love your hair. Notice your daughters. And the same is true for the guys. A lot of the guys, though, you need to be touching them by wrestling with them. And, just make sure that with the guys as well, that there's this contact, there's physical touch that is healthy from a safe parent. So I want to throw it in there for somebody who needed to hear that, because it covers them in Teflon when it comes to a lot of the needs that teenagers have from the opposite sex, and it helps them and gives them strength when it comes to temptation. This one is asking questions, and I've got a couple questions about divorce. Let me just say this really quickly. There is a teaching that you can kind of find in the Bible that says the only reason that you should divorce somebody is for adultery. Now, that's not what the Bible is saying. And when you read it in context, you'll see that. A lot of us counselors as pastors and Christian counselors, that we recognize that, yes, some people they want to end the marriage too quickly about a lot of issues. But there's 4 areas that we see that sometimes a person will never change. We call them the 4 A's. And it's like abuse, adultery, abandonment, and I'm trying to think of the 4th one. It'll come to me in this time. But there are other areas that are bad. And there's no way you have to stay in a marriage where you are physically abused, where someone is beating you, hurting you, the kids. It's your goal also, man or woman, because I know some pretty aggressive women, that if they're abusing the children, it's your job to stand up and shut it down. And you'd better, because when it comes to marriage, it's crucial. The other one is addiction. Thank you. The other A is addiction. That in those 4 scenarios, we find over the years of counseling that God can't make that spouse change. They can stay committing adultery. They can stay in an addiction where they can be committing adultery and transferring killing diseases to you, killing and hurting children. Spent a lot of time counseling in jails, and so many people just broken because while they were drunk, loaded, or whatever, they killed somebody they loved. They're really sorry for it now, but when they did it, so it's a much bigger area. In fact, the standing joke used to be in certain denominations that you can't divorce your spouse, so you may as well kill them because they'll let you back into the church for murder, but not for divorce. And the sad fact is it's true, and it's still true. There are people in our church that I've had to talk with that they got into a divorce and the church wasn't there for them or their children. They shunned them. It was brutal, and the kids turned away from God. And that person they got a really poor look at the Bible and marriage. And so get some good counseling if you're in the middle of something. And yes, I believe that pretty much everything, just about everything, is forgivable. And if you can work on a marriage, please, you're going to discover. I'd say about way more than half of the people in their second marriages, when their second marriages hit the counseling office, will say, I probably should have worked on my first one. And I guess, everything. A man is a man is a man, and a woman is a woman is a woman. And they realize everywhere they go, there they are. But there are situations of an abandonment, an abuse, an adultery, an addiction, that it is not safe, it is not right. I can't look at some woman and just judge her as her pastor. So you're going to spend the next 50 years being beaten, kids with no real dad, he'll abandon you. And nope, but we can't get divorced. It's just a ridiculous concept. I don't have time to teach on it right now. And there's some great books out there that walk you through doctrinally what Jesus is saying, what the law is saying. One thought, for example, is for those who are really legalistic on this, you can't get divorced unless you commit adultery. Well, Jesus took that to a pretty high level when he says, if you've done it in your heart, then you've already done it. And so there's something that you got to think about and consider. Get help, though, when you start talking about this area. See a mature Christian counselor, and even they can make mistakes in this area and say, nope, work it out, work it out. Now, there are some things you don't work out. You walk away from that. And if they are going to change, they change without you in the home, etc. What are good boundaries we should have? Okay, what time have we got here, you guys? And well, you know what? Just talk to somebody here as to what time we want to quit. I don't have any clocks around me, and so if you're enjoying this, I'll keep going. If you have to go because the sitter's late, go ahead and slip out quietly. But let's see what some other questions are here. Okay. This one says, how does a couple take turns needing time to unwind without trying to debate whose job is harder? Tired from work, tired from kids. Okay, someone's going to get upset with me, but let me speak some real truth. Many of us have jobs where I can control my day, I can have my coffees, I can go for lunch with interesting people. If it's been a really intensive thing, I can. If I've got a job where it doesn't mean I'm not working hard, it just means that I have more control. I get lunches, coffee breaks, breakfast, and then I go home to my wife, and she's got 5 kids, and she hardly has time to go to the bathroom. Have a shower is like a unique thing, because how do you do that with 5 kids, for example? And she can't even get a conversation on the phone, have a nap. You need to recognize that my job's pretty cool. And if you don't believe it, you stay home for a week. Don't try one day. Anybody can do one day. You stay home for a day, for a whole week. And you start making lunches, changing bums, figuring out what a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old. You figure out how to keep them active and busy when they're awake and how to get them to sleep. It is an incredible job, and women are stunning at it. But I want to say to you men, mostly I notice that men need to wise up and help out more, get better, develop skills to be a blessing to your wife. Because I would say that in a majority of what I have dealt with, I'm looking at these guys going, come on, dude, you can't tell me your job is that hard. Now, there are men whose jobs are so emotionally demanding, whether it's a police officer or picking up dead bodies and dead children and things. And you can't say for a minute that they're coming home, oh, you had a fun day. There are jobs that are absolutely destructive, that you're seeing things that she'll never even see in her life unless she's a paramedic. So you just need to, both of you, wise up a little bit and just talk with each other. How was your day, hon? Well, you know what? I haven't slept yet. I haven't had a shower in 2 days. How was your day? You know, my day was good. I want you to take a break. Or she'll say to me, like, how was your day? I say, you know what? Oh, I lost a little girl in the back of my ambulance, and shoot, I'll give you a break. No. You take an hour. Like, you begin to love each other and recognize the jobs. But yeah, learn to help each other around the house, but recognize what has that person gone through, what's her day like, and to be a selfish person that says, well, I've got my job, you do yours. No, your job is 8 hours, and being with the kids is an 18-hour-a-day job, and especially at certain ages. So be thinking of that a little bit. What are some good boundaries we should have with the opposite sex? Friends, work peers, etc. All right. You know, I'm going to say some things, and these are my thoughts on it. And the Bible does not have a hard rule on it, but things that have really helped us, and I've trained staff and people. I don't have a best friend who's a woman. of the opposite sex. That's Sally. She's my best friend, period. And all the other friends that I have are, good friends. But I don't have a good friend that I spend time alone with who is the opposite sex. I have just had so many problems over the years working with marriages and people where these good friends at a bad time, a hard time, cross a boundary, and pretty soon they find themselves in trouble. And so if you are in couples and you hang out with another couple, of course, they're both your friends, but even there shouldn't be a time spent alone together, building a relationship without your wife there. Or ladies, there's a guy that you really enjoy. We've been friends my whole life and we got married. You can't tell me he can't be my best friend. I would find that out before you marry her, because there could be a huge problem there. And I agree with you. You can have good friends, absolutely, of the opposite sex. I'm just telling you that once you get married, you need boundaries. And that boundary would be, in those cases, have your spouse with you. Don't go off and just be cautious there. I think there's some good guidelines you can put together, like when it comes to work, don't go out for work lunches, just you and the opposite sex. There's sometimes you might get stuck where you can't control it, where someone was supposed to be there for a meeting and that other company only sent a woman, and if you're a guy, and back and forth. And I know there's some things you can't, but don't practice that. I find that someone say, well, you are really naive, Leon. You are really good Lord, get with the times. No, you get with the times, because 50% of our marriages are hitting the skids. And today's world, they don't want any rules. They want grace, but they don't want truth. And truth is the guidelines to a great future. Truth is the directions to building a great home and a family and a marriage and protecting your sex life, etc. So anyway, you do what you want. Well, it's a free world. How do you deal with a spouse who is very emotionally manipulative? Nothing I say or do is enough. Well, emotional manipulation is an ongoing thing in couples. I mean, every couple needs to recognize that marriage is a control thing. It's always fighting for control, whether it's dominating, silent treatment, withholding sex, not engaging, marriage is always about control and power. And so until you work these things out and recognize that, learn that, so don't play that game, it's actually not hard to deal with a spouse who's emotionally manipulative once you understand and learn these things. There's some great books that are out there on this topic. It doesn't mean that person's a bad person. It just means they have never had anything else modeled to them. And so if your spouse is emotionally manipulative, you just read the book on marriage and boundaries. It'll cover this. And recognize that if the emotion is anger, you get out of the room. If that emotion is just raging, just walk away. You're not called to sit there and to be emotionally manipulated, and recognize it and tell them that. And so there's no way I have time to go through it, but there's some great stuff out there. If you recognize that you're being manipulated emotionally, just say you don't want it, and stop the conversation. If that person doesn't stop it, you leave the room. You get up and go for a drive, whatever. But you need to set a boundary there so that person, one of the things about many kids today is they grew up with permissive parents who would always save them from the consequences of actions that they shouldn't have been doing. So an emotionally manipulative teenager, which by the way, that's the most manipulative group on the planet today, is your teenagers, and younger than that. If they were allowed to be emotionally manipulative, and you didn't learn to you didn't shut this thing down, you didn't learn to set boundaries on them, and they grew up getting their way, you just married someone that you're going to have to set boundaries, and they're going to have to learn and develop in this area. So Okay, now I'm looking at you all. That guy that's falling asleep that's doing the nod? No, he's not. You all seem to be pretty attentive. You enjoying this? Give me a wave if you are. And good. Let's do a few more. I keep forgetting it's earlier there than it is here, so we can have some fun. This issue about emotional manipulation, this issue of manipulating one another to get what you want, recognize that that's an ongoing thing in every marriage. And as you mature and understand love and God, you can begin to want out of that. You can begin to want to go, I would rather just look at you and say, hey, baby, I would love if we could get together. I've been thinking about you, and just speak openly. Just talk openly. Tell them what you want. Tell them what you've been going through. The Bible has a phrase that says, speak truth in love. It doesn't say speak truth to get what you want. It doesn't say speak truth to get them back. It doesn't say speak truth. It says speak truth in love. You see, if you love somebody, you don't want them to be manipulative. You don't want them to live in anger and irritation. And you're their best friend. You're their lover. And to love them and to value them is to put boundaries in place and not put up with that action. It'll cost them their career. It'll cost them your kids. If you don't deal with this, your children will have to deal with this. And so loving that person is loving them enough to risk losing them, or to risk no sex for a month, or to risk that our relationship's gonna, be hurt for a while. You would rather have that than spend the next 40 years with a continually irritable spouse. Because that low-grade irritation that doesn't seem too bad, it will destroy your love life. It'll destroy your attraction to them. It'll destroy your kids. They don't want to come home. And because you backed an irritable spouse that has never had been confronted, those kids they might have to for a while, but they'll zone out with their iPads and they'll want to stay at their friends. And as soon as they're out of the house, they ain't coming home because you didn't have the guts to confront a spouse who's never been confronted by a parent. They just want to love him. I am in love with babies and kids, but I watch sometimes some of the women in our own church, the way they deal with stuff, even some of the things they say and do, and you look at them and go, you are raising up a little rotter. It is your job to love them, but you must speak truth. You must make sure that they don't get their way, that they have consequences to their actions. Loving a child isn't removing consequences. In fact, that is hurting them, because nobody else in life except their spouse might do that. Job's not going to do it. The police aren't going to do it. Teacher's not going to do it. University's not going to do it. Their whole life's going to be messed up. And so we're not raising little princesses and princes. They're not royalty. They don't get free passes on everything. They need to learn to work hard. They need to learn to have all the 9 fruits of the Spirit are a brilliant thing to look at, and do it in the Amplified and say, okay, so what is long-suffering? Because I have to teach my kids to develop that. What is self-control? Because I have to teach my children to develop that. What is patience? What is kindness? What is joy? And as you look through the 9 fruits of the Spirit, which are the strengths that every person needs to have great relationships. And there are times I've counseling with marriages where I'd be counseling with one of them, and they go on and on and on and on and on and on, and they've got their spouse doing a bunch of things wrong, and it's impossible to out-talk them. And I finally get to a place where they go, okay, just stop. Like, I don't know, get a pet, because no human being is going to want a relationship with you where it's all about you. If you were raised in a relationship like that, or if you're a single-parent family, you need to know that every one of us who are parents, none of us are perfect. And so my kids have to look at Sal and I's relationship and how I was a father, and recognize the things that I was not good at or weak at, and then develop. So as best we can, a lot of the stuff in our marriage is really about stopping it from going on to the next generation and the next generation. I've been now a pastor long enough to see the grandchildren of the people I got saved. And in some cases, certain traits they'll never deal with in that family, right there, I could pick out their granddaughter easily, not by looks, but because of the way they act around other kids their age. And so it is up to us to grow, to develop, to be as much as we can renew our mind, the things of God. Why? Because it's the only hope that we have to help our kids to win in these areas. And don't just say, well, this is who I am and bless God, they just know that. No, that's not who you are. Those are the habits you've developed and picked up for some reason, and the Holy Spirit's quite capable of helping you change that. This one says, how do we move forward if there was an affair or trust lost? Well, you move forward with wisdom. If there was an affair, then you need to see someone who knows what they're doing and say, okay, how do I walk this out? You need to recognize that if there was an affair, that was not just a last minute, oh, I made a mistake, I'm so sorry. No, that's been thought about and thought about and thought about and thought about. That's the only way these things happen. They don't just happen. And so if there was an affair, your marriage is in a bad place. You need counseling. You need help. It's not just, well, just forgive her, forgive him, forget it, move on. Everything's going to be fine. No, things won't be fine. There needs to be a real looking at what's wrong with our relationship or what's wrong with that person. It's not always the relationship. Of course, most times there's always things that are going on in the relationship, but it doesn't give a person the right to have an affair. But you need to recognize that your marriage is worse than you think if there was an affair. Why did that happen? Now, marriage is created by God. Marriage is perfect. There's nothing wrong with marriage. It's the people in the marriage. And a marriage is never stronger than the weakest person in the marriage. And so you can't make your marriage strong if the spouse doesn't have the same desire. And your marriage, this relationship between you and your spouse, is only as strong as the weakest link. So if that link did something that much betrayal, that much heartache, that much to affect the generations and all of that, you would risk everything on this, there's a problem. I don't know what that is. I'm not even going to begin to probe at it, but there needs to be some serious counseling, some serious talks, and deal with what happened, how did it get there, and deal with it. And I will say, another question that has been asked, and it's somewhere in here, oh, here it is. It says, do you believe in saying that once a cheater, always a cheater? I would say no. But the stats are, I think, as high as 75% that if a person will do it once, they will do it again. So we know through counseling stats and working with couples that yes, once a person has crossed that line, and there's always a certain amount of pleasure, even if there's pain, it's much easier to cross that line a second time and a third time. So are they always? No. They just need to do the work that's necessary and get some help for your marriage. And if they refuse to and they don't, you need to be careful for a lot of things. Like, good Lord, you can make love to your spouse, however later you think this marriage is ready. And if we've got disease today, the diseases don't just give you a wart or a scab, it'll kill you. And it'll destroy, and it can destroy your family and your kids, some of the things that are out there. So it's not a little thing. Anyway, I think I dealt with that pretty good. Can you go over what the benefits are to save yourself for marriage? Yeah, I'd like that. Today in our world, by numbers, vast majority of people are not virgins when they get married. And, that's just the way it is. Now, there still are lots. They're embarrassed to say anything because they are pummeled into submission as not cool or attractive. But I'll tell you right now that it's a gorgeous thing when you save yourself sexually for the person that you're going to get married. So before I talk about this, let me put it this way. I'm not talking to people who are married right now and you're feeling guilty and condemned because you didn't. No. The blood of Jesus washes you clean. You're a brand new creation. Now you will have to renew your mind, your emotions, your feelings, and your imagination. If you don't do that, your past sexual issues will rise up in your marriage. Guaranteed. But if you do renew your mind with God's Word and you read who you are in Christ and you develop and work on your marriage, all that is not just forgiven, it can clean out the residual effects that it has on your marriage. So kids need to recognize, and you need to teach your children that if you don't save yourself for marriage, yes, God forgives you. And some people, they can have a lot of fun because pleasure is from the five senses. Joy is from your spirit. So are there pleasures with the five senses? You bet. Sex is pleasurable. Food is pleasurable. Rising up with influence and being a significant person and recognized and admired is great. Hearing beautiful music. So all the five senses have pleasures. Now, the Bible's very clear on how to control those so you don't self-destruct, because many of these pleasures can kill you either slowly or quickly. And so God puts things and says, hey, if you want to have an amazing sex life, then get married, wait till you get married, and then develop and grow in this intimacy and in this technique and. So we know, and there's lots of great material out there on this as well, that when a man and a woman come together and have sex, okay, that something happens. And you can't really explain it other than the way God designed it was when you married your spouse and you make love. Somehow, I can only give you a fishing example. It sets the hook deep when you love somebody and date, and then you meet, and then you begin to make love, and you learn and grow in that area. God has designed it to pull you together, to set the hook for each other so deeply that it makes it through all kinds of storms and disappointments. But if sex is just an indoor sport that was done before you got married and after you got married, and it's no big deal, it's harder to hold a marriage together emotionally with deep feelings. And I'm not saying in every case, I'm just saying in the vast majority. So yes, we've got to teach our kids and our teens and stop warning them so much. I remember one time getting up in front of the youth group, and every once a year or so I'd often speak to them and I'd say, hey, today we're going to talk about sex. And all the teens kind of went, because they've been warned about it so many times. And I went the opposite way. I just said, hey, it is incredible, phenomenal, wonderful. Wait till you guys have an orgasm. And they couldn't believe I'd be talking this way. They know it. They totally get it. It's just that they're for sure that Christian couples don't have great sex lives. So stop hiding that from your kids as though, well, my mom and dad never would. Ooh, that's gross thinking that my mom and dad would. Well, of course it is. But you'd better still show them passionate kisses and embraces, and you guys leave us alone on these nights, or or teasing, where they look at you and go, whoa, mom and dad are like, that's what you want. Otherwise they go, yeah, Christians don't have good sex lives, so I guess the world, sex is kind of off for Christians. Just be quick about it and leave as many clothes on as you can. And not a chance. We need to be very open with our kids as they grow, age specific, and let them know incredibly the amazing gift that it is. And there's lots of great stuff as well. You'll hear me keep saying there's lots of great stuff out there, because there is. When Sal and I first got married, there were some great books that we could read and helped us. My mom and dad said, there wasn't anything when we got married. Well, now that our kids are getting married, there's amazing stuff out there on every topic. And there's some junk too, but there's some amazing stuff that Christians won't read. I'm going, are you crazy? Like, you want a whole lot better sex life? Read about it. Read about technique. Read about what God says about it. Read about what it means in the Bible. It doesn't make sense to not talk about it and to study that stuff. So now I totally forgot what the question was, but whatever. Here we go. This person says, my wife has never had an orgasm and I feel so incompetent. Yeah. When it comes to making love, pleasing the other person is a big deal. It becomes more and more important to you. And that requires talking about it. We've had some couples in our church that actually had to go for special help, special operations. There's other reasons at it, but mostly, it's just about ignorance of technique, ignorance of understanding how God designed a woman's body, a man's body, your own body. And so many people who have just realized I could read a good book about this or get some counseling about it. And a lot of times people have been raised in religious homes where, especially the girls, where sex is evil, it's bad, they only want one thing, da-da-da. It just is pounded into them. And even though they no longer believe that, those are the heart beliefs that have been placed there for 20 years by a worried religious mom or dad. And so to recognize that, I'll just make some really blunt statements. Ladies, you deserve to have an orgasm. God did not design sex to be male-dominated and not for women. And the more you study books, you'll find out women are far more orgasmic than men. They can enjoy sex at a whole higher level. This kind of bothers you the more you read about the physiology. And they enjoy it more and more and can actually do it better and better into old age as men begin to wind down. So just the reason I'm saying all that is because God did not design you to not enjoy sex. And sometimes it's not your husband's fault, it's the way you were raised. I remember listening to one person who was a great teacher. I've had the honor of interviewing some of the best teachers out there, Christian, who write books on this. But anyway, this one person made this comment. In a marriage, as two people learn to make love, it's important that you learn to take your satisfaction, not wait for it to be given. So, yes, making love is about giving, but making love is about learning to take and to know that that man is going to be even happier and fulfilled to know that you could take and be blessed and be happy. And so you need to teach him, show him, explain to him. Bottom line is, it is super easy to help a guy, become fulfilled, but it takes a whole lot more art and a lot of other things to help a woman to be fulfilled. Now, that doesn't give you the right to stop sex. It just means have talks and show him and giggle. I think that one of the problems with making love is that movies always have a choir of violins. Everything connects at the right time. She's in the mood. He's done something to save her life. It's on grass with no thistles and no sap and no poison ivy, and it's just the right temperature, and they make love. That is so unrealistic. It's not, every time you make love, it's not going to be bells ringing. And if you can both fulfill each other at the exact same moment, great, that's fantastic. But there's so many other issues here that you need to recognize. I lost my train of thought there for a minute, but I got to finish it. You need to recognize that for you to be fulfilled and to be happy month after month, year after year, decade after decade, it requires talking. Oh, that's what I was going to say. And you need to make the bedroom a place to laugh. You need to be able to laugh and not have him get offended. You need to be able to giggle with each other and be the place you can lock that door down and you can talk, you can giggle. That's not the place to talk through your problems. There's always one spouse that wants to talk about the problem all the time till it gets solved, which might take 10 years, which means every day of your life is talking about problems. No, set aside a few minutes to talk about your problems or an hour here, and then it's done off, kick it out, because we can laugh and talk and create a fun bedtime, etc. But I want you to tell somebody, please make the bedroom a place of laughter and joy. All right. I don't know if some of you have had anybody talk this blunt, although we all talk this blunt, period, in everyday life, because sex, it used to be hardly talked about, is on every movie, it's everywhere all the time, and it's about time that we heard someone talk about it from a grandpa and say, hey, here's what the Word says. How do I get my wife to stop spending our money? That's a good one. Well, let's talk about that. I remember having a chat with one guy one time, and he was looking at shopping. And so she spends too much money shopping. And I remember chatting with him saying, okay, let me ask you a question. Do you golf? Yes. How much does your golf fees cost every year? Well, I mean, no, just tell me. So he gave me a figure of how many thousands it was. I said, cool. Do you hunt? Well, yeah, I hunt. Cool. With your licenses and your travel and all the, how much do you spend on hunting? And he, it was thousands. And I just took him down. Okay, now, do you play sports with the guys? You're playing hockey with the guys and a farm team. Well, yeah, what's your ice cost? Well, we all throw in $400 and we have to buy. Like, I began to walk this man, and this is not everybody, I walked this man through an understanding of what he was spending on his lifestyle, even though it wasn't clothes. And I think he began to wake up and realize, so we're at $10,000 right now for you, dude. So before you start telling your wife and dictating to her what she should spend, you need to have a sit down together and look at all the money that's being spent by each of you. And ladies, never let the man control the money. Never let him have an account that you don't have access to, and vice versa. Never, guys, sit down every month or two, or at least quarterly, and put all your money out so she gets a chance to see where the money is being spent, that there isn't that excess, and if and that way, you don't have to be your daddy. It's an awful feeling when we talk with men that they're trying to control their wife's spending. Well, that's what her dad did. She doesn't want to be married to her dad. Include her in the financial talks and look at what we can afford for you to spend on clothes and whatever sports and things you want to get involved in, and whatever sports and hunting and things I want to get involved in. That's how you would talk this out. Then you're not continually checking up on each other and making money. Money is one of the top 3 reasons for divorce in Christian marriages. It shouldn't be. It should be an easy thing to deal with if you'll put all your bills, all your money, all this going out, put it out on the counter and take a look at it. There are many men, ladies, I'll tell you right now, who they don't look it, but they're kind of broken inside because their entire life is just trying to keep up to make enough money to look after the spending habits. And it's exactly the same for men the other way. I've got women who are, so it's not one or the other, I'm saying both. But you don't want that. You want to be able to laugh and talk about everything. And that way there's equal sacrifice. Or it can be, what did you want, sweetie? Well, our couch is so messed up. And you go, you know what? You're right. Okay, let's do it. Well, we don't have the money. You know what? I don't need that hunting trip. I go to the same place every time. Seriously, I want us to bring some money here. Or I can go and I can work an extra shift, or maybe you can pick up some of this work. Like, you begin to talk together and work together. And the desire is this, that whatever you want in life, sweetie, I want you to have it. And if we can't get it together now, let's put a plan together to help you get that. That's an incredibly sexy, gorgeous, wonderful way to deal with issues in a marriage. Well, what do you need that for? You're already out doing this and this. And what do you need 3 pairs of shoes for? You can only wear 1 pair at a time. 3 pairs of shoes? It just creates this conflict. Just talk, open it up. And then when you talk about money, it's easier for you to recognize when you go to spend some money that, okay, this month I know that we got to be careful here. The other thing is, write it down. I mean, we've got some good courses in our church about finance. And whoa, take that, it'll change your thinking forever. I wanted all my kids and all their spouses to take our finance courses where you could learn to budget, learn to handle money, recognize that if you have some great habits, you can be prosperous fairly quickly in life and not be, I meet guys my age and they're still struggling with credit card debt and overspending here. Well, they deserved a holiday, couldn't afford it, but they deserved it. And all this crazy thinking that has kept them, where they are. So money is blessing from God. More money will not solve your problem, okay? Because a person who's out of control always goes beyond the boundary that should be there. So the key is talk about it and talk about life. Like, well, what do you want to do? Well, we need to go on holiday. Well, what does that mean to you? Well, I don't need to go to Maui, but I wouldn't mind like a cabin close to the beach in one of our lakes here. Like, as you chat and talk, you can kind of dream through what you want to do this year for holidays, your house, your couch, clothes, etc. And it's in that kind of a discussion that you begin to want stuff for the other person. And so when it comes to money, don't let it become the dig that hurts you. I've told many guys, rather than you being paranoid about money, eat porridge for a month with her if you have to, if you don't have enough money for groceries. And I mean, it can be the other way as well. But I'm just saying, refuse to make it a battle. Keep talking, keep meeting, put your bills out, take a look at stuff. Let her know what's going on, and let him know what's going on as you guys walk this out. And not one person should never control the money. Often one person is better at administrating the family's money. So you both have access to it, but one of you has developed, okay, you look after the bills because they're better at it or they got more time or whatever, but each person should know what is going on with the other person's money. All right, I want to wind down, so I think you guys got a chance to have coffee and hang out. I'll see if I've missed, there's sheets of more questions. We could have another fun for 2 hours, but I want us to stop there, and I think a lot of things have been said that'll bring hope. Marriages don't need their problems solved in most cases. They just need hope that we can fix this, we can change together. And I've seen the smallest amount of hope radically change a marriage. Keep bringing hope to your spouse, talking. I've said a lot of things. Include God in your relationship and make sure that you are using the process of faith on your marriage, your sex life, your finances, your wife, your husband, and be speaking out loud the promises of God's word over yourself and over them. And then a strong faith life is in your marriage and in your home. And man, do problems get solved quickly and easily when this dynamic faith that only comes from meditating in God's word and speaking his promises, persuading your heart. Well, man, I wish I could hug everybody. That's one of my problems in the midst of all this. You get me around people, I want to hug everybody. But I hope you guys have had a great evening. Hope you can visit a little bit with some friends. And most of all, make sure that your marriage is your best friend and your lover. And they can't be your only friend. Girls, you need other girlfriends. Guys, you need other guys. You'll never be everything to that person. But your marriage and you as best friends, just look after that and make sure that you're best friends and lovers. Don't be controlling. Give that person freedom. Galatians, I think it's chapter 5, verse 1. But it just says that God has made you free. Enjoy your freedom. That means marriage is not where you are locked into never having your own time, your free time, time with friends, where you can go out. Don't let marriage become where one person controls every minute. Where are you going? What are you doing? Why would you need to do that? Why would you want to be with me? These are controlling things. Let marriage be your best friend. Let it be your lover. And let there be a freedom that wants that person to live their best life. And that means with us as a couple, not going off the rails. And you'll find that, man, you can have a new marriage pretty quick. So there's some great books there. I think they're out at the book table. I think I've already talked about the ones that we've got here. I Want a New Marriage. We talked about that one, where everybody should be building a new marriage all the time. This one about the destructive force in relationship. Everybody needs to listen to this. There's a number of sessions because it will show you how to unwire judging. Because every one of us has been trained to judge, and how we judge people is where you'll drive your kids away, your spouse away. And we may as well learn it so that we don't pass it on to our kids, and you'll be shocked at how much you learn. You might have heard it before. When you listen to it again, God will show you new things. Calgary, Sally and I love you guys so much. And our prayer is the best is ahead, the best is yet to come. Have fun with the rest of your night.
So Valentine's Day is coming up. What are you getting your wife?
Nothing.
I don't think it works that way. Nothing?
Nothing.
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 Diabolical.
Yep, this year for Valentine's Day, I'm the present.
Oh, can I please be here when you tell her that?
Look, as if our wedding vows weren't enough. Through the years, I power washed the deck, I YouTubed how to build a walk-in closet, I even changed the toilet paper roll. Sometimes without even being asked. I took her to Graceland twice.
But Graceland isn't a two-trip kind of place.
And do you know where she has her weekly women's Bible study every Monday night?
Do I want to know?
Right over there, in front of my 70-inch crystal clear True Tone LED, while I sit in the back room watching Monday Night Football on my kid's cracked iPad.
You saint.
So, this year, no presents, just presents.
What'd you just say?
I'm not getting her any presents. I'm giving her presents.
So let me get this straight. For Valentine's Day, you're not getting her any presents with a T. You're giving her your presents with a C.
That's what I said. Presents, not presents.
Diabolical.
Hey, honey.
Yeah?
As you can imagine, Valentine's Day did not go well for Jerry this year. Don't be a Jerry. Make those you love feel special.